Welcome. I thought this week I'd better say who I was. Someone came up to me after our presentation a couple of weeks ago here as we kicked off our annual lecture series and said, "It seems like you're somebody around the place. Can you tell me who you are?" So my name is Rhonda Parker and I've got the privilege of being the CEO of Alzheimer's Australia here in Western Australia, and I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. And as we start, I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respect to elders past and present, and pay my respect to other elders here in this room. This night started months and months and months ago when we applied to the state government for funding from the Department of Premier and Cabinet, the Premier's Social Innovations Grant Scheme, where we applied for funding for a Dementia-Friendly Communities project. And we were thrilled in December to be advised that we had been successful in that funding, and I want to acknowledge the state government here tonight. The Minister had wanted to be here but had a clash in his diary, and acknowledge the state government. It means that Western Australia is the first state or territory, as first jurisdiction in this country to embark on a Dementia-Friendly Communities project. So we're really, really excited to be here tonight. Glenda and Bronte are our first speakers tonight, and at Alzheimer's WA we've got a commitment to make sure that we include people with dementia in our conversation. And I know that there are people here in the audience tonight, apart from Glenda, who have a diagnosis of dementia. And I just want you to know we're very grateful to have your contribution to our conversation, and you're especially welcomed. So we have a no discussion about us without us policy where we like to include consumers in all that we do, and in particular in our public presentations. And I just want to acknowledge Glenda and Bronte's commitment to us and to the cause. They do things with us and without us. They go tramping around the country to CWA meetings and the like. Glenda has had a distinguished career as an educator, and she said to me one day, "I've been an educator all of my adult life, and I'm going to continue with this diagnosis. I'm going to continue on as an educator. My topic might have changed, but my passion to educate has not." So Glenda and Bronte, we highly value you, and I'd better read what you've got here for me to tell about you, but I'm going to summarise quickly these 6 paragraphs and just say they're wonderful. But the formal script says that Glenda and Bronte they're our consumer representatives today. They've been married for 31 years and have 2 sons in their 20s who still live at home. Glenda was diagnosed with Benson's disease, or posterior cortical atrophy, a rare form of dementia, in 2010, and resigned from her position as principal of Penrose College at the end of that year. Prior to this, she was principal of Western Australia's largest independent school, St Stephen's School, for 6 years. She has been a secondary school teacher, a curriculum developer and writer, having written school textbooks and atlases, and as a lecturer in teacher education at each of Perth's 5 universities. She has a PhD in education and completed an honours degree in geography with a thesis in climatology. Glenda's profile perhaps gives lie to the often used mantra in the world of dementia, "Use it or lose it." She has certainly used her brain, but as we know, dementia can be no respecter of persons, and despite her very active cognitive life, she has been diagnosed with dementia. Bronte has been a Senior Executive Director in the State Government Department of Education and has recently retired at Christmas after a period of carer's leave from that role. Together, they now participate in several of Alzheimer's Australia's consumer advisory committees. Glenda is the Western Australian member of the National Consultative Advisory Committee and more recently a Dementia Advisory Committee that is made up only of people with a diagnosis of dementia. They have been also guest speakers, as I said before, to aged care providers, medical students, and are currently speaking at several CWA meetings in rural Western Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that you'll love listening to Rachel and Jason, but I also know that you'll be impressed and inspired as you listen to Glenda and Bronte as they share with us their experience of the world around them as a consumer and a person with a diagnosis of dementia. Thank you very much, guys.
How many of you have gone away on a, what am I going to say, Bronte?
Holiday.
On a holiday in a camper van, or something like that. Have many of you done that? Yeah. Well, so have I, and I've been lucky enough to go to, doesn't really matter where I was, but because I can't remember where I was, but anyway, that's okay. Sorry, I'll get my mind in the right order in a minute.
You're in the caravan.
Oh, that's right, yes. I'm in my caravan park, and it's time for me to go and have my shower. I go into the facility and think to myself, this is a little different than normal. And I start to think about, I wonder whether I'm in the wrong place. And I sort of work out for myself that I'm actually in the men's area. Very, very challenging. How do you get out without being seen that you're going to be out? So I stayed in the shower for ages and ages and ages, so that I could be, well, I was very, very, very wet by the time I finished, but I needed to make sure that nobody was around and had seen me, and of course really sorry.
Highlighted the issue.
Yeah, it highlights the issue that there's very poor signage in lots of places, not just parks or anything like that. So it is a real challenge for people like me, and I'm sure other people with varieties of dementia.
Okay. Good evening. That's our introduction. Start with a quote that was announced here less than 2 weeks ago by an international dementia expert, Dr. Alan Power. Some of you may have been here and heard him. He said, "Dementia is a shift in the way a person experiences the world around them." He also said that rather than say that a person is dying of Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia, a new definition might state that a person with dementia is, quote, living with a chronic disability. Now, if we accept that definition, we open ourselves to a new paradigm, if you like, about how we react to people with dementia, the management of their diseases and their engagement in our community and how we care for them. For persons living with dementia, living with such a chronic disability highlights many deficiencies in our physical or our built environment and our social environment. So the project being launched tonight will stimulate a discussion amongst those who can influence our planning and our actions and our behaviour and help address those deficiencies. So Glenda, who has, as you've heard, a specific form of Alzheimer's, knows only too well about some of those deficiencies. So as you can see, I'm going to help Glenda deal with the information that she wants to impart to you by asking her a series of questions. So the questions are about the public or the built environment that can disorient, distract or confuse her, or indeed be hazardous to her. So Glenda, the first one is, tell us what the problem is for you with shiny and reflective surfaces.
Well, quite often it's very, very difficult to discern what you are looking at, particularly in places where there is a lot of shiny surfaces, mirrors, things like what else?
Walking into lifts.
Oh, yeah, walking into lifts. And for me, I find it really hard to manage that. And what else? Sorry.
Glass in.
Yeah, glass. Glass, of course, is something that I've probably I've knocked my nose quite a few times, but I do have a big nose, I have to say.
And taps in modern wash basins.
Oh yes, taps in modern design of are often really just awkward. You can't. There's one down this end, there's another one down this end, and then there's water under here, and then and someone like me, as soon as I find that, and I'm sure there are other people here with different types of dementia, would have the same experience. As soon as you sort of think you can't, it's something that's not familiar to you, you immediately sort of start to panic. Well, I do anyway. Start to panic and think, even though it's quite a simple thing, and it's very, very frustrating because you know what you want to know and you know what you want to say, and so on.
Okay.
So that's probably not really what I was supposed to be saying.
No,
anyway.
that's fine. So, Glenda, describe what the problem is when you enter a cafe or a restaurant or a shop or an office.
Well,
what's the main problem
probably
there?
the main thing would be noise. Just the huge amount of noise. Most surfaces in buildings are very harsh, and it sort of just comes down on you as if it's almost fighting against you in a way. Yeah.
And then there's the other issue which plays in the background.
Oh, just music and I think I would call it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so these things can distract and distort a person who has dementia very easily. Not just those, not only for Glenda, but with the committees that we're involved with, we interact with others with dementia, particularly those with younger onset dementia, and these are common experiences. So Glenda, talk about the problems that you have with steps and stairs.
Oh, well, and also escalators, but that's another story. But essentially, I'm sorry, I'm not.
The lack of a guide rail.
Oh, yeah, sometimes there's not. Handrails, and or things are perhaps not very well maintained, so that you find it hard to that things are a bit broken, and you're actually worrying about, am I actually? Having said that, the type of dementia that I have means that I find it really quite hard to see things. That kind of impacts on me.
So surfaces on some stairs, this is not an example here where there is a handrail, but there are areas in the public domain where there are steps and stairs that don't have handrails. Excuse me. There are also surfaces which are very smart architecturally, like polished granite floors, which can be very slippery and smooth. And on the other hand, there are those that are unsteady and irregular and possibly too rough, which can be hazardous. So Glenda, talk about also footpaths and footpath crossings.
Yes, well, similarly, quite often they're not consumer friendly. I think, you say more, Dels, because I'm not making much sense.
The same as stairs and steps, that not always are footpaths, so very dementia friendly. One of the things with all of them, steps, stairs and footpaths, is they don't always have a white line or a yellow line on the edge where someone with a visual issue, and this applies to people with visual impairment, cannot always see where the edge is. So this is another aspect of the physical or built environment that is hazardous. Okay, well, that's enough said about the physical environment, but it gives you a feeling, I think, for the sorts of issues that people with dementia experience. It doesn't encompass all of them by any means. The second area that I'll ask Glenda about is the aspects of the social environment that can be stigmatising. And we hasten to add that in our experience, it hasn't happened to us or to Glenda very often, but it has been raised with us by others who do feel this way. So Glenda, talk about one of the issues about people who serve at counters in shops and
yes,
banks and other
yes,
organisations.
yes. Yeah, if I was able to describe this, it's where people are very impatient, sort of wanting, like, particularly people who are, rushing around, and they might be, oh, goodness me, look at her, what's wrong with her, and that type of thing. And it's really, obviously, not very friendly at all. I think is probably the main issue that I've come across anyway. Yeah.
And also there is a tendency to be patronising on the part of those who confront someone with dementia.
Yeah. Having said that, it must be very hard for people to discern whether, it's good or bad, or...
Is it dementia?
Is it dementia? Yes.
Could be something else.
Yeah.
There's also related to that is the issue for many people with dementia is their money handling capability. And again, this reflects again on people in the service professions where money is exchanged. How do they deal with the person with dementia who might be more confused than normal? Okay. Then there's the general communication issue about people talking. What are some of the issues that you and others have found about the way that people talk to people with dementia?
Oh, yes. They quite often put you down, or sort of like your poor thing, as that type of, probably, the intention is good, but it can be, well, I don't know about other people with dementia, but you still got a life, at this stage, and people tend to talk down to you as if, you poor dear and that type of thing, which I don't particularly like that. But that's just me. It's not. It may be different for different people.
And what about the manner of their delivery?
Not sure what you're meaning, Dol. Sorry.
Sorry. Sometimes people speak too quickly.
Oh, too quickly. Yes, that's true. Very fast, especially younger people. Blub, 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 blub. Or
not clearly enough.
Yes, yeah.
They may use long and complex sentences. They resort to jargon and acronyms. All of these are problematic for people with dementia. What about the aspect of prejudging, your level of understanding?
Oh, I'm not sure what you're saying, Dol, sorry.
We have rehearsed this.
My memory's not that good.
Often.
Actually, sometimes that's really good to be able to say that.
And in preparing this tonight, I've been accused of these very same things about speaking too quickly and in long and complex sentences. Because I probably have prejudged Glenda's level of understanding, but I think that's what the point is, that there are people on the other side of the counter, if you like, who may not address their response to the person who has dementia, but to that person's carer or companion, and therefore indicate that they have no understanding or awareness that the person with dementia may still be able to understand some or most aspects of what's being discussed. Okay, there are many other aspects too, but time prevents us from considering them all. Some of the important ones are about form design and document design, which people with dementia struggle with, and these become legal issues. But one area of concern, which we'll just touch on, and perhaps Glenda can respond to that, what's the looming issue over credit cards and bank cards?
Well, my understanding is that you will have to rely on, no, you're going to have to tell me, sorry.
Rely on using the PIN.
Oh, yes, a PIN, which, of course, someone like me with four, I can't remember the whole things in a row, so...
And I went to our local ATM in the shopping centre to one bank that was blocked, and I went to another bank, I won't name it, but I noticed it had a sign-up saying as of August the 1st, the signing capability will be removed from transactions using credit cards and bank cards and the like, and that I know was to be raised nationally by Alzheimer's Australia as an issue. I'm not sure whether they've had any success in doing that. So this, again, is a social issue for people with dementia. Okay, now for some positive things, because a lot of those were fairly negative. Glenda, talk briefly, I think Rhonda touched on what some of the things we do, but just perhaps elaborate on how we have been raising community awareness about dementia?
Yeah.
CWA.
Well, yeah, we've gone to various CWA.
You all know what the CWA is?
Yeah.
Country Women's Association.
Don't speak condescending, Roddy. Sorry. Now, what was the question? Sorry.
What we've been doing with CWA groups.
Oh yes, we have through relatives. We've been asked to go to go to the country to help people understand more about what's happening with dementia and so on, and because some of those people have felt it very sort of, I guess, isolated. And we've had several opportunities to do that, and the response has been really, really fantastic. Because I think when people talk about dementia, they're really, particularly in the early stages, it's people are very frightened and they don't really necessarily want to know the truth. But it's been. I think the feedback that we've had has been really fantastic, and there are other people who've asked us to do something similar because they've heard about what we've been doing.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
and finally, there are 3 activities or areas that Glenda is involved with, which we could describe as being dementia-friendly, where she feels socially included. Just briefly run through or give the 3 examples of what they are and how people help you.
Okay. One of them is I belong to a music group, and the ladies there all know about what I can and can't do, and they have been absolutely beautiful to me. They have because as I've already said, I find it really hard to read. They have put together a great big booklet with all of the words that I need to sing and so on, and they've done that on their own.
Large print.
Yeah, in large print, and I was just really gobsmacked at how beautiful and how lovely they were.
And the person who stands next to you.
Oh yes, and the person who stands next to me, because we've got a lectern, and she runs her finger along where I'm up to, so that I don't, because otherwise I'd be going like that, getting in a muddle.
And your second example?
And my second example is
Gym and yoga.
Oh yes, I go to gym and yoga, and people there are also very understanding. They, if I'm doing something incorrectly, they don't just, they don't do it. They do it. They will correct me in a nice way. Yeah, so that you don't feel really silly or anything.
And
like
finally, your last group, your walking group. What do you do
then?
Yes.
I enjoy going to a walking group, and in that group.
What do you do though?
Oh yes, what do we do? Well, we walk to start with. And when we finish walking...
Or you do something else though. You walk and you talk.
And we talk. Of course we talk, we're women.
And you gossip.
And, well, Bronte just said, and you gossip, but that's not true. We just learned lots of interesting information that we didn't know before.
And then you finish up with coffee.
Thank you.
And your coffee.
And of course, we finish up with the coffee. So, thank you.
Okay. Well, that's all I've got to say, really. So thank you for listening to us.
Well, there's one thing to hear from the wisdom of years and years of study and practice, but there's another to hear from the lived experience. And you mightn't have been listening to the applause, Glenda and Bronte, but I think everybody here tonight is the richer for having being the beneficiary of your courage and willingness to participate with us and give us an insight so that we can be better informed and have a better understanding and share with you some of the things that you face on your journey and that might be the experience of other loved ones that you have in your lives, so that people like Jason and I and the staff at Alzheimer's can then incorporate and change across communities the awareness and those built environments and those social environments. And that's really a great segue to introducing Jason Burton to you. Jason originally trained as a mental health nurse in the UK, and he has worked for over 25 years with people in dementia, both in the UK and in Australia. He started school very young. After emigrating to Australia, Jason took up a position with Alzheimer's Australia WA, and he's in his current role as General Manager of Education Research and Consultancy Services. He leads our teams providing education and training. We're a nationally accredited registered training organisation. He also leads our culture change programs, our design and technology initiatives, and creative arts and engagement programs. And as I said to you before, Jason is heading up our Dementia-Friendly Communities program across Western Australia. And I'd like to invite Jason here tonight as we launch this project to actually just let you know what we have scoped into that project for that 2-year period and what we hope to achieve and how. Thank you, Jason.
Good evening, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. And as Rhonda said, this is the first event in 2 years of hard work ahead of us. So it's a really nice way to kick it off. And again, thank you, Glenda and Bronte. You continue to inspire and are the reason that I come to work every day. I'm going to be brief in what I'm going to talk about because we do want to have a bit of a question and answer panel session at the end, because I'm sure you'll have lots of questions that you'd like to fire at myself, Rachel, or Glenda and Bronte. So we will keep a decent amount of time at the end of this evening to be able to have a bit of a question and answer session. So I will keep myself as brief as I can be, and those that know me know that that will be a challenge. So we've been very fortunate to receive the 2-year project grant from the government of Western Australia to really look at what it means to live with dementia in Western Australia and how we can go about a range of initiatives to create a state that's dementia friendly, that's enabling and that's inclusive. And that's really, I guess, what we are aiming to do in this project. It's a very broad area of work, and when we talk about dementia friendly, it encompasses everything in reality because it's about the lived experience of having dementia. So it's a very broad scope of work, but we've kind of narrowed it down to some initial initiatives that'll be our focus, but we will continue to build on all of these areas. Just in terms of dementia in WA, as Rhonda said, these were the figures from last year in terms of the number of people, but we're over 30,000 people living with a diagnosis of dementia. And I say diagnosis of dementia because, as Rhonda said, our diagnostic processes still need improving, and there's still lots of people who go for many years without receiving an accurate diagnosis. And I think, we know the figures about the number of people that are going to be living with dementia. Interestingly, as Al mentioned in his talk, those figures are being revised all the time because there's lots of factors that are coming into play around that. But roughly, we're going to see at least a doubling of the number of people living with dementia over the next 30, 40 years. And interestingly, we did a report in 2010 that looked at where do people with dementia in WA live, and which suburbs, which local government areas are going to experience the largest growth areas. And what we found through that study that we commissioned Access Economics on was that 80% of people with dementia live in the metropolitan area and 20% in regional Western Australia. And then in terms of growth within local government areas, the biggest growth area is Wanneroo. Anybody live in Wanneroo, or anybody from the local government of Wanneroo? Even better. Would be good to see them here. And again, when we look at these figures, the places are Wanneroo, Mandurah, Dawesville, Mindarie. It's not surprising when we look at the ageing population in those suburbs and those regions. And again, the close correlation between the incidence of dementia and ageing populations. So it's not really surprising to see those figures. What was quite surprising was when we sent this report out to local governments, we actually got some negative responses from local governments saying, we don't want you saying that our local area is going to have lots of people with dementia in it. And that for me was the inspiration to go, we've got to do something about this. You can't keep burying your heads in the sand. This is an issue for your community. You need to support your community, and it's the role of Alzheimer's Australia WA to support you, to support your community. So that's really was the motivation for getting this project off the ground. In terms of what we're going to be doing, some of the key initiatives. First of all, listening to the community. Rachael will talk in more depth about the UK experience in actually engaging people living with dementia to I guess, help drive and help us understand what the local communities need. So one of the first pieces of the project is going to go out across Western Australia, regional and metro, and actually listen to people living with dementia and what it's like to live in their communities and help them guide us as we move forward with this work. Reducing stigma, and Glenda and Bronte talked about how stigmatising dementia can be in some situations, and a lot of that's through ignorance. It's through not understanding. And so we will have a really strong program over the next 2 years called Dementia Aware that's really going to get out there into the communities. This is our memory van that you can see up here. You can't miss it when it's on the road. It's bright teal and it's big and it's in your face and it's meant to be. So that memory van will be getting out on the road all the time, visiting regional communities, visiting local shopping centres, and we're going to launch a program called Dementia Aware Friends, where we're going to ask people to volunteer to become advocates for this message and actually get the message out there. So that will be happening as well as part of this project. We're looking at supporting inclusion for people, and by that I mean particularly in some of the areas that we take for granted. When we go to the art gallery or we go to the zoo or we go to the museum, that we can find our way around and we can have a good experience there. But for people with dementia, that can sometimes be challenging. So we're looking at an inclusion program, working with those types of environments to actually support them to make it more inclusive and more enjoyable a visit to those types of facilities. It's based on the work that we've been doing with the WA Art Gallery, and we've had a really strong program with them for a number of years now, where we train their volunteers and we train their staff. We looked at their environment for them. Whilst there's still improvements to be made, they have made improvements, and they're now at a point where they're comfortable as an environment that they actually advertise on their website that if you do have memory problems, come and tell us at reception, and we will get a guide who's been trained who will make it a really positive experience for you visiting the art gallery. So we want to take all that learning and share it with the zoo and the museums and the regional art galleries to support inclusive programs. Developing understanding, and by this I mean particularly understanding within business, within services such as transport services, within the local shop, the local bank, the local deli, whatever it might be. And we're going to do this through a resource that's called Is It Dementia? And this is a wonderful resource that's been developed in Alzheimer's Australia, South Australia. It's online. If you haven't had a look at it, it's worth having a look. All the videos are on there. It's a series of training videos for the different types of services. So as you can see, there's training videos for rail, taxi, bus and coach, so transport services, emergency services like ambulances, fire services, retail shops. The fire services have got a separate one, banking, and correctional services. And these are really, really high quality training videos that an organisation can pick up and use with its staff. And so what we're going to be doing is working with local companies and local businesses to actually encourage them to take this up as part of their staff training programmes. Really pleased to say that some organisations are already started. The ANZ Bank, for example, have committed that every staff member will be trained using these videos across the country. Our own fire and emergency services have committed that all of their staff will be sat down and will get to watch this, including the volunteer emergency service staff as well. So, it's started and we want to keep that momentum going, and this project will certainly be advocating for that. Enabling environments, Bronte and Glenda talked a lot about, the physical environment and, the stuff that we take for granted now in terms of disability access. You wouldn't dream of creating a building that somebody in a wheelchair couldn't get into. We want to see the same type of approach for people living with dementia. So we want to see environments that are enabling, that do support them. To that end, we're working with the University of Wollongong, and we're going to be putting together a learning resource and an audit tool for public buildings. So any library, shopping mall, any public type access space will have an audit that they can actually measure themselves against in terms of enabling environmental issues, and then hopefully make some changes around that. And anybody who knows me knows that this is a real passion area of mine. And I can't go anywhere without my iPad because I'm constantly taking pictures of dementia disabling environments. And anybody who follows my Enabling Environment Facebook page will know that I have a wall of shame. And if I'm in a space and I see something that's really inappropriate or that is going to disable somebody with dementia, I take a picture of it, I put them on my wall of shame on Facebook, and then I send the company an email and explain to them why this might not work for somebody with dementia. And I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of that, just to give some graphic examples of some of those issues that Glenda articulated. So here we are. Hotels are the worst offenders. It's very rare I go into a hotel and find appropriate carpet flooring in the hotel. So here's a couple of offenders. This one was in Melbourne on Monday, where I was staying in this hotel, and this one was in Brisbane a few weeks ago. These are not unusual. And even this carpet that we've got here at the front, is not ideal. So, we're trying to help people understand what problems this will cause somebody for who's got perception problems, spatial perception problems. The Burswood, anybody been to the Burswood conference area where they have their shows and things recently? They spent millions of dollars refurbishing that whole area. It's really, really dementia unfriendly. So I did send them an email. I'm still waiting to hear back from James Packer. But you never know. Hopefully next time they refurbish it, they'll think these things through. Couple of other examples. This one on the left here is actually an architect's office, which is a concern. And the reason I put this one in is because it's a really good example of how this space here, even without perception problems, could look so easily like a step or a hole. And so if you've got any type of spatial perception problem at all, this here is going to be a real barrier to you. So this is the sort of thing. This here is the toilets of the National Portrait Gallery in Canberra. I'm going to name and shame them because they should know better. And the way it's all very modern, it's all very aesthetically pleasing to interior designers, but for somebody with dementia, trying to find a toilet in this space is going to be nigh on impossible. It was hard enough for me to decide where the handle was. One of these is a door handle into the toilet. The rest of them are just wooden slats on the wall. So, the only clue that there is a toilet door anywhere near this is these little signs at the top. Other than that, trying to find your way into these toilets is nigh on impossible if you've got any sort of perception problem. So these are the things that we want to challenge, and these are not unusual by any extent. This is unfortunately still very common, so this is what we want to challenge. And what we want to do is work in partnership. A big part of this project, it's so big we cannot possibly do it on our own, so it's really going to require us to form partnerships and work in partnerships. One of the biggest partnership areas that we want to work in is with local government. They often, the local governments have disability inclusion plans, they have community planning, they're responsible for urban design. They're responsible for a lot of these areas that if we can improve them, will make a big difference to people living with dementia. So we will have a project specifically looking at local government. We will be looking to pilot with 4 governments, 2 in regional areas and 2 in metropolitan areas, where we'll want to pilot with those 4 local governments to really look at what dementia-friendly means to them as a local government and what responsibilities that has for them. And then from that pilot, we want to develop a resource that any local government in Western Australia or further afield can pick up and actually utilise that resource to start to put this on the agenda for that local government. So that's going to be a big piece of work for us over the 2 years ahead. Other areas like libraries, libraries are such a community hub these days, and they can play a great role in what they can do to support the community. So we've started some discussions with libraries about what this means to them and how they can be dementia friendly. The Chamber of Commerce and Industry, obviously through business, is going to be an important partner for us. And the dementia-friendly symbol, and this is a bit of a sneak peek, and I thank Kylie, who's here from the National Office with us, for allowing me to give you a bit of a sneak peek at the dementia-friendly symbol. But what the plan is for this symbol is that certainly initially we will be looking at businesses that are committed to being dementia-friendly in terms of their physical environments, in terms of their staff training, in terms of their inclusion and accessibility. And if they meet certain criteria around that, then they will be granted the opportunity to promote themselves and to have a dementia-friendly symbol in the window, so that if you are living with dementia and you see that symbol, you've got a confidence that that environment that you're going into is going to support you. So that's hopefully going to come in the next 6 months. Around about the next 6 months. And then we'll look at other ways of using the dementia-friendly symbol as well, but that's certainly its initial use. It's been very successfully used in other parts of the world, and we're certainly learning from those experiences to look at it here. So that's in a very brief nutshell, the next 2 years ahead of us. As I said, it's a major project. We hope it will have really strong outcomes across Western Australia. There's a lot of challenges in there for us, as you can imagine, but we're very committed to making some really big strides forward, and with the support of everybody, including the community especially, then we will move towards being a dementia-friendly state, and I think if we can do that, we'll certainly be on the right track for the future. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Jason. I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to go straight into introducing Rachael Litherland, who arrived here on her whistle-stop tour only this morning. So Rachael has worked with people with dementia for the past 12 years. With a background in psychology and advocacy, she developed and managed the National Living with Dementia program for the Alzheimer Society between 2000 and 2006. This included providing leadership on issues relating to the involvement and support of people with dementia and supporting people with dementia in service and information development, campaigning and self-advocacy. Rachael is now a director of a company called Innovations in Dementia, CIC, and a national community interest company. Innovations in Dementia works on a range of positive projects with people with dementia, including Shared Lives, Circle of Support, work on dementia-friendly communities, projects on assistive projects, and the Dementia Engagement and Empowerment Project. And the work of the organisation is centred on the voices and the experiences of people with dementia. And we're thrilled that Rachael is here to help us launch this program. She's speaking at a workshop tomorrow, and we have a sneak peek here tonight. So Rachael, you're very welcome, and it's wonderful to have you involved right up front of our project, and to have you here at the beginning, and for us to hear of your experience and your work in this area. So give Rachael a lovely Perth welcome.
Hello, I'm learning lots of new phrases on my tour of Australia, and my one today is kangaroo tour. I like that one. So I'm working my way around Australia and meeting lots of great people as I go. And just to kind of reiterate, I'm giving you a kind of short presentation of some of the work that's been occurring in the UK. But my work at Innovations in Dementia is all about people with dementia, and people with dementia are our partners in the work that we do. So this is kind of the experiences of people with dementia and relating to our work, and my kind of my voice on their behalf. So it is a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and I'm talking in more detail tomorrow at a workshop about the way that we've been involving people with dementia in my organisation. But I think at the heart of what we've been doing in the UK around dementia-friendly communities, it has to be people like Glenda and other people with dementia who are driving forward that agenda, because how do you design a dementia-friendly community unless you know how people with dementia want to carry on engaging in their community, what the issues are, and seeing the world from that perspective. So I would kind of congratulate you really in Western Australia and what your plans are here. And also, just to make the point that your dementia-friendly community is going to look quite different than our dementia-friendly community. And perhaps your experiences here in Perth are going to be very different than in your country areas. And I think that's what's really great for me to see in such a big country, is all the difference and all the diversity. And actually, community is quite an interesting discussion to have with people. You know, what do you call your community? Is it your town? Is it your state? Is it your street? Is it the internet in your Facebook world? You know, what's your community? So to have some consideration of that. So in the UK, people with dementia, it's about getting out and about. It's about shopping. We all talk about the weather continuously. You know, that's the kind of thing that frames us. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that has occurred and that has kind of brought that to the forefront. But that's those pictures there. And I guess I'm just reiterating to you what I heard from Glenda and Bronte about how social engagement is really, really helpful. A little bit of information, some small changes. People who understand more about dementia can make all the difference in terms of the way that you carry on engaging in your life, but also your plans for what this project will look like in Western Australia, I think really kind of mirror the process we've been through in the UK. It's been an interesting few years actually in dementia in the UK. So we had a national dementia strategy in 2009. this nice document here. And I think that really has helped to frame what the future looks like for people with dementia. So my organisation is all about supporting people to live well with dementia. And people with dementia are at the heart of that. They work as co-partners on all of our projects. And our national dementia strategy is called Living Well with Dementia. Health and social care strategy sets some really high standards actually about the expectations for how the health and social care support was going to be made available across the UK for people with dementia. So a real drive towards early diagnosis, diagnosing people early so they can live well for longer. There's lots of media campaigns that went with that, tele-advertising, massive billboard adverts, to try to engage the population in understanding that actually people with dementia are your neighbours and your friends. It's not just something that happens to people living in care homes who are very elderly and very frail. And 2/3 of people with dementia in the UK live in the community, and 1/3 of people with dementia live alone in the community. So actually the community has got quite a big responsibility to do something about that. So we've got a health and social care agenda that's about diagnosing people earlier and supporting them to live well for longer in the community. But, and I think we've heard this a lot tonight, people with dementia are more than their diagnosis. They're more than their health and social care needs. And actually, if you're diagnosing people earlier, people want to carry on doing the stuff that they enjoy, enjoying their life, taking part in their community, contributing to their local community and being an active participant. So that's the context for us in the UK. We've got quite a large population of people with dementia. We've got quite a large population compared to Australia, quite a small space. Now I have kind of done my kangaroo tour. 800,000 people with dementia, and the same projections that you have here. It's likely to double in the next 40 years or so. So it's a growing issue. On top of the dementia strategy, we have had some quite big strategic drivers to making dementia-friendly communities a bit of a reality. So in 2012, our Prime Minister, David Cameron, made a big declaration, big challenge on dementia. Lots of investment in research, as I think your government has done also, but very specifically said that he wants to see dementia-friendly communities become a reality in the UK. And I think what we have is a strategic overview. This is what is important. This is what people want to see. But actually people with dementia themselves, grassroots level, saying also this is what's important to us. We want to carry on living our lives and being full and participant members. My organisation has done quite a lot of work with people with dementia and carers about what the definition of a dementia-friendly community looks like. And, you know, simply, it's a good place to live with dementia, a place where you feel that you're respected, listened to, where you can get out and do the things that you enjoy doing. So whether that be going to yoga, going to the library, using the bank. And we have developed the 5 cornerstones model, which is a bit jargonistic, but at the heart of that, I think you can see that it's a person with dementia. And I think you can't lose sight of that at the heart of all these discussions have to be people with dementia driving forward what a dementia-friendly community looks like. But what people have told us in some early work that we did for the Department of Health, where we did some we ran some focus groups with people with dementia in lots of different communities around the UK, so country communities, little villages, multicultural cities and market towns. And we were asking people then what they thought a dementia-friendly community looked like. And then we did that on a broader scale for the Local Government Association in 2012, who wanted to know how they could start to support local councils to be good places to live with dementia. And people with dementia said 4 things really. It's a place where you can find your way around easily, good navigation, good signage, and you feel safe. You feel safe going out in your community with dementia. Somewhere that you can use the local facilities, the things that you want to do, the banks, the libraries, the cafes, the cinemas, going to the gym, where it's a community that supports you to keep your social networks, and whether that be in a very kind of formalised way, perhaps through something like our Circles of Support project, where people take on roles in terms of keeping people connected to their communities, or if it's just about going to your club or keeping your friendship groups going. And also, and I think this is really key, where when you're out there enjoying your community and doing the stuff of life, that other people understand a little bit more about dementia than they did. And actually, it's the people who make all the difference. You can go into the worst dementia-friendly bank, post office, cafe, and it's, you know, you get yourself through the door and you get yourself there and you work out what to do, even in that terrible kind of toilet example. But actually, it's the people you meet then. If they can overcome all those dementia-unfriendly situations that you've just encountered, that's the thing you're going to remember. So a bit of awareness, a bit more of a confidence building in the general public and in customer service providers in terms of how they manage and support situations where they meet people with dementia. And I think our statistics in the UK and our surveys have perhaps thrown up something quite interesting and maybe a little different than surveys you've been conducting here in Australia. But actually 95% of the general public in the UK are saying they still think that people with dementia have got a lot to offer to their local community. Only 6% of people with dementia who were surveyed thought that they had anything to offer, and I think that's a striking difference. And something I would probably add into this model, and something we found, is that people with dementia, as well as doing all the stuff of life, actually want to carry on contributing, whether that be in a volunteering role, whether it be in a paid role, whether it be having hobbies and taking part in life, but still having value. And actually, really happily, our general public appear to think also that people with dementia have got a lot to offer their local communities. So I think we've got a few stars aligned at the moment in the UK. And I just want to share with you some examples about why it's working. And I think it's working, as I said, because we've got some strategic overviews, some really good drivers like the Prime Minister's Challenge, but also loads of great grassroots activities. And I think that's probably the thing that will help you in terms of taking your work forward here in Western Australia, is to capture those great examples, you know, your wall of shame, but also your walls of success. Where is it working really well, and what is it about those environments that makes that a really good cafe to go to if you have dementia, or that library, or that gym? What is it about those things that make this a good place to be? So in the UK, we've got a Dementia Friends movement. So by 2015, there are to be 1 million Dementia Friends across the UK. It's a huge commitment. It's being run by the Alzheimer Society in the UK. And this is where the general public learn a little bit about dementia, bit of training. What do I do if I encounter somebody with dementia and I need to identify, first of all, that might be the problem, but also how can I best support them? What if I'm behind somebody in the queue at the supermarket and they're struggling? You know, what is it I can do as an individual person? And the roles of those Dementia Friends is to kind of pass on the knowledge a little bit as well. So people are becoming Dementia Friends champions and perhaps going to their pub or to their workplace or within their family group and passing on that bit of information that they know. And the expectation is that the more people understand about dementia, when you're out and about in the local community, you're more likely to encounter people who can support you. So big initiative there, but also loads of great examples, as I say, at a grassroots level. So the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, anybody who perhaps has an ear to, well, you probably know the Joseph Rowntree Foundation from Yorkshire, big chocolate family, left lots of money in trust, you know, great social philanthropist. Around social justice, initiatives around social justice. So they're funding a lot of work around dementia-friendly communities. And it's the small steps. It's the train station, the police officer there. She's a police officer at York train station. She has walked the patch with people with dementia in that train station. And I think, again, going back to my little flower, talking with people with dementia about the issues that they face and the difficulties they face. So walking the patch in the train station, people trying to find a train on the timetable, trying to work out from the screens which platform to head to. You know, where's the exit? How do I get up the stairs? You know, simple things that make all the difference. And actually now she will say that she's just got more of an eye, she's got more of an ear to what the needs of people with dementia are, because she's spent some time She's now the dementia champion within the train station and passing that knowledge across the train stations in the North East. It's become apparent to me what's being here in Australia, that actually train stations aren't the relevance here. You've got airports, dementia in the airports are what's needed. And I think that's maybe one of your challenges as well. You've talked, I think, a little about customer-facing staff, but a good customer, good staff member behind that counter at the bank or the post office, the cafe, makes all the difference. Somebody who's got good customer service skills to start with, put a bit of dementia knowledge on top of that, and you've got a really good approach. So the Alzheimer Society, again, has produced a really good document to help to raise awareness and to train front-facing staff in terms of understanding dementia a little more. Fish and chip shop down in Devon, where I live, Purple Angel, which is the other symbol that other people are using to identify that this place knows a bit about dementia, and they've been given the seal of approval. We were in there one day and we thought, wow, well, let's just see what happens. They've got a Purple Angel on the front door. 16-year-old spotty kind of teenager working behind the counter, just asked him what the Purple Angel was, and he was very proud in conveying his knowledge. So he knew a bit more about dementia. He said that, he explained what dementia was, that it might present itself in different ways. You might not always be sure that somebody has dementia, but these are some of the issues that people might exhibit. And this is all I would do. If people were struggling, I might help them with their money, or I might remind them that actually they've just been in and they've already had some food. And you could see how chuffed he was. It really had empowered him. And, as I say, this kind of little bit of information was really going a long way. Quite a lot of initiatives across the UK on a national level around schools. And in our work with people with dementia, we're always being told you've got to educate the youngsters. If youngsters grow up with a better understanding and appreciation of the issues facing people with dementia, then actually that's going to be really good, because they're the ones who are going to be working in professions. So there's a national project, 22 schools are engaging in this, and dementia is being discussed on the curriculum, but also there's some really interesting initiatives emerging from that. So one secondary school down in Devon, they run a memory cafe, and it's becoming apparent that maybe memory cafes are a UK thing. So memory cafe is a social space where people with dementia and carers come together and get support in a very sociable way and enjoy each other's company. This particular school are running a memory cafe in their school library. So it's a more unusual setting, and there are 40 identified dementia champions from within the student group who all volunteered for this role. They've all become really interested in this. This film clip down at the bottom, this is a film that people with dementia made with a school in York called Tune Into Dementia. So if you look up on YouTube, Tune Into Dementia, you should be able to watch this fantastic film, which has been made for other school children to understand a bit more about dementia. So it's quite trendy, there's a lot going on, and people with dementia and pupils made that film together. I think I've heard this as well, during the evening. It's not just about what the community can do for you, it's about what you can still do for the community. And I think that's a really important driver for me, for my organisation, Innovations in Dementia, because that's what we're all about. It's about people with dementia still having a role. So we're managing, on behalf of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, a national programme, and I'm going to have to say it's called DEEP, and I think it corresponds to your own project, which is about enabling environments. So we've got the same acronym. But really, this is about groups of people with dementia across the UK. At the moment, we've counted 37 of these groups. That's about 350 to 400 people with dementia who are joining forces in local areas. They're coming together, 5, 10, 20, 50 people with dementia in local areas, talking about what needs to change if life is going to be good with dementia. So they get a bit of support from each other, but that's not the primary purpose of coming together. It's to influence and change. And what we're doing is connecting up through DEEP all of these groups so that actually together they're stronger. Together you've then got a very loud range of voices of people with dementia all fighting for the same thing. And one of the main things that those groups of people will say is we want to carry on feeling useful. We want to carry on doing the things that we enjoy doing and participating, but actually giving something back. It doesn't just end because you have dementia. So here are some examples of that. The guy in the kind of bluey t-shirt, he works for a project called Frames of Mind, and this is where people with dementia are working with carpenters to make picture frames. It's a job. The people out in the lovely British sunshine are with an organisation called Dementia-Adventure, and I think that name speaks for itself. These are people coming together to have adventures. It's not about sitting in a day centre and being cared for. It's about getting out in the environment and having adventures together. This is a choir down at the bottom. In the UK, there's a kind of range of groups called Singing for the Brain. But this isn't a theatre. This is a proper, real-life public performance by of a choir of people with dementia. And this other group are called the Together Group, and they are actually working in their local area, which is called Redditch, and they are creating themselves, 12 people with dementia, Dementia-Friendly Redditch. And I think these, for me, these are just some great examples of work that people with dementia are doing together. I do feel like I'm reiterating a lot of what you've already got planned in Western Australia, which I just think is fantastic. And I just want to show you that, that collecting up these examples and sharing them around, because I think that's what is happening in the UK. There's a bit of a social movement developing because we're all talking about dementia-friendly now. There's so many examples, and actually you start to connect them all up together, and it feels like there's a world of change possible. But dementia-friendly audits, that idea of having an audit of your service, of your building, of the flooring, of the environment, absolutely essential, and something that people with dementia are really kind of enjoying being part of. So this is some work that we're doing with our older people's network of organisations across the UK called Age UK. They had a handy person project, and the letter on the left was how they described that to people who use the service. Not really very dementia friendly. So we just supported them at no cost. I think that's the thing, some of these things do not cost money. They just require a different frame of mind. At literally no cost, that leaflet was changed to become much more dementia-friendly. Similarly, I've got my own examples here. This is Age UK again. So this is a big piece of work we're doing with them, 45 Age UKs, trying to help them to think about how they shift their generic older people's services so that when people with dementia come and use them for benefits advice, hairdressing, drop-ins, whatever it is, that it's more dementia-friendly. So up on this picture, the open sign, you want to push that door, don't you? You actually need to push the other door. So all they've had to do is to shift the sign. We've got a few checklists of our own. So there's a checklist for dementia-friendly environments here, produced by the Local Government Association, which allows organisations and services to run a bit of an audit. So just to conclude, I think what we're learning in the UK and is not dissimilar to where you've got to here in Western Australia is that you need people with dementia at the heart and the start of this. It's not going to work unless you're really engaging people with dementia and defining what a dementia-friendly community looks like. Walking the patch with people. What's the world like from the perspective of people with dementia? They can help you make the changes. Sharing it, just talking about it, and congratulating services and organisations who are doing it really well, and giving a helping hand to those that aren't. There is a business case for dementia-friendly communities, because if you've got a cafe or a shop that's going to be a better place to go, people with dementia are going to use that. So actually, using that as a bit of a driver. But also thinking about some of the barriers. So it's interesting in terms of Disability Discrimination Acts, because sometimes the issues that are important for people with dementia actually go against some of the recommendations in Equalities Act. So I think there's some discussions and some barriers to have there. And also that 6% of people with dementia in the UK don't think they have anything to contribute to their community. So there's really low expectations about just what's possible. So how do you raise those expectations? Oh, that's gone a bit strange. It needs leadership buy-in. You need to get lots of the key people around the table to talk about this. So it's not, it's actually not just health and social care organisations. It's not just the care home down the road. It's the police officers. It's the shop owners. It's the Chamber of Commerce. Actually, forming alliances amongst those organisations with people with dementia at the heart of it is the way to take this forward. And this guy, Peter, he's a man with quite advanced dementia. He was involved in one of our filmmaking projects and with a filmmaker made his own film and took a real participant role in that at a time when perhaps people didn't think that was possible. So I just kind of want to leave you with that image, really, that it's people with dementia for a long, long time who can drive this agenda. Thank you.
Yes, the idea of the dementia champions and the dementia friends from the public, have you put any security screen around these people, because people with dementia are so vulnerable to being exploited?
Yeah, it's a programme run by the Alzheimer Society, so there is training and there is ongoing support from dementia champions who are kind of hosting that. But I think the idea is that it's not, these people are not, they're not fully, they're not care workers, they're not specialist support workers, they're just you and me who know a bit more about dementia. So the expectations about what they will do are not huge, it's just that if you encounter people within your local community that you're able to respond much better. So I think I can understand why you think there's a danger, and I guess it's still in development. But there is a kind of central repository for who these people are, but they're volunteers. They're volunteers who are supported by the Alzheimer Society.
Hi everyone, I do work for Alzheimer, so this isn't rigged. I looked at Jason's presentation where you had those carpets and you were giving another bad example where the pattern can be quite distracting for someone with dementia. Now, I have a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which means it leads to blindness. Now, for me, that carpet is actually really helpful because it helps me see that the carpet, it goes to the end there. So how do you sort of make that decision? Okay, you want to be dementia friendly, but you're taking something?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Karen. And it's something that we face because when you look at Australian standards, for example, around disability access to some things, there are some things in there that are clearly really useful for some people with certain types of impairments, but that then can actually create major problems for other people. And it's getting that balance between needs is a really challenging, there is no easy answer to it. Let me give you a couple of examples. When you come up to a level crossing, you'll get the darker tiles with the dimples on them, so that if you do have a visual impairment, you know that you're coming up to the edge of the road where the pedestrian crossing is. Now, the problem is if you've got spatial perception problems from dementia, that looks like a big hole in the ground.
Exactly.
Give you another example, the taps, the mixer taps, which are designed for if you've got arthritic hands or very little hand movement, you can then control the lever tap with your arm easier. But again, from a familiarity point of view, we know that the old-fashioned crosshead taps work much better for people with dementia. So there's always this conflict in some areas about the challenges between making, environments as adaptable to the needs of people as we can. And there is no easy answer to it, because it can cause, it can be good for some people and not good for others.
Thank you.
Could I just add to that?
Sure.
Because I think that is kind of what I was referring to with the some of the barriers, because in the UK with the Equalities Act, then there are certain things, certain standards that are attached to buildings for physical access. So we just conducted an audit, a dementia-friendly audit in a museum, but they had recreated the museum based on good practice around disability. So actually the issues of people with dementia perhaps are not the same. So you have to you have to be pragmatic, I think. And yes, it's not at the expense of other groups, but actually I think what people with dementia have told us, and it may be different and it may change, is that actually you get beyond difficulty, the barrier. Maybe there are some simple changes that you can make that just make it more welcoming, but actually it's the person, it's the people you meet on the other side that actually is the most important thing.
Question here in the middle. Thank you, Sarah.
Just on built environment again, I work with architects and interior designers a bit, documenting their work. There's a very strong, a lot of them are quite strongly driven by aesthetics, and there's often fairly grudging acceptance of standards that they have to comply with. And I'm just curious to know whether you're coming from those sort of built environment issues with planning and architecture and interior design, whether you come at it from a standards perspective or from client demand or from or directly to those designs.
I guess a number of things really. Unfortunately, in Australian standards at the moment, there is virtually nothing to do with cognitive impairment. So when you look at the standards around even things where you think it would be really obvious, like wayfinding, there is actually nothing specifically written for people with cognitive impairments around those areas. I guess, how do we change architects? Anybody can tell me, I'd love to know. But no, seriously, I think it's a combination of being able to hear the stories, and the reality for people living with dementia and what that actually means to them and how it does people. I come from the philosophy of people don't have a disability, they're disabled. And it's often they're disabled by the environment or by the other people around them. And so I think having the opportunity to hear what it's like to live with dementia when you come across these barriers, I think that helps people understand better. And whilst we have some wonderful resources now around design, and there is no excuse anymore for not knowing because we've got some of the world's best resources we've developed around dementia design, I still think making it personal and having the opportunity for architects and interior designers particularly to hear what it's like, what the impact of what they're creating has on people, is a great motivator for change. Did you want to add anything around the personal experience?
It's not perhaps a politically correct kind of answer, but as with the behaviour of people in service roles at shops and cafes and the like, banks, whatever, I think one of the things that we believe is that people should be asked to put themselves in the position of the person with dementia, to try to appreciate it from a different perspective and a different point of view, so that whether architects can put themselves in that role and say, well, what if it was me engaging with that built environment? Would I be happy or comfortable with that? Obviously, it requires some knowledge on their part from people who do have dementia, but that kind of approach may well open their eyes to the need for change.
I think also with architects, they work to a brief, and I think part of raising the awareness with employers and the organisations is getting them to change the brief that they give to the architects. I think an architect will be driven by aesthetics. It's in their DNA, but it's about changing, I think it's a lot to do with changing the brief and the specs by the person who wants the building designed. So get in at that level. We have a clear issue around readability and accessibility for us in our work, but it's amazing how diligent you need to be to make sure that even if you've given the specifications that you want something done to meet readability or accessibility standards, that the default position is always to defer to something that might look a bit more, sexy from an aesthetic point of view, or have more wow factor about it. For us, those things always are second rate to us. We don't want something boring. You don't have to go to boring, but you have to be very, very strict about what your specs are.
In the UK, we have got a few architect firms who are really making a name for themselves with dementia-friendly design. and engaging with the National Dementia Action Alliance on creating dementia-friendly communities. And I think they're doing it because that's what they're interested in, but also there is an economic imperative, because actually if they work really well working around dementia-friendly design, they're going to get more work.
And can I just finish that off by saying that there are many, many architects out there who are really interested. They are doing great work. Ali's in the audience here, and Ali's a colleague of mine who's an architect who's doing some wonderful work. BGC came to us last week and asked us to get involved with them to look at house design for older people and make sure that there's dementia-friendly and enabling principles are built into their house designs. So it's moving forward, so I have great anticipation and hope that the years ahead we'll really see some big improvements in this area.
I was just wondering how you're going about finding people in the community with dementia or experiencing the symptoms of dementia, particularly around the stigma, and finding them to do all the research for you in these communities, especially in rural areas.
People are emerging in the UK, and I think, you know, I've been working around the involvement of people with dementia for 15 years and started that work at a time when people just weren't used to speaking out and being listened to, and there were lots of individuals with dementia who were kind of putting themselves out there and really raising awareness. And I can't quite explain what has happened, and I think it may be around the dementia strategy, and it may be around a philosophy of living well and early diagnosis, and you know, kind of people living in their communities. But people are connecting to groups. It's quite an organised way of receiving post-diagnostic support for a short while in lots of areas of the UK. And when we started the DEEP project, which is this thing about connecting active groups of people with dementia around the UK, that was 18 months ago, and there were 12 active groups of people with dementia, and a really big one in Scotland called the Scottish Dementia Working Group, and some of you may have heard of those, and then lots of little pockets. And we said, well, we'll create a few more, and now, thankfully our funders didn't tell us how many more we had to create. We thought maybe 4 or 5 more. You know, let's take the number to 20. Let's be ambitious and take the number to 20. We're only halfway through the project, and there are 37 groups, and they're just, I think people need to be inspired. People need to get some really good, strong messages that you can live well with dementia, and these are ways that other people are living well. So I think people like Glenda are great advocates for really just inspiring other people to want to take part in this. And I think it's, you know, it's having some goodwill and wanting to do it, and also, you know, highlighting some really good examples. So I think if you've got those examples of people being engaged and involved, kind of make the most of them, because it will inspire other people who maybe haven't realised that you can have such a say in what's happening.
Can I say, just at Alzheimer's in WA, I think that we've got lots of room for improvement in how we engage with consumers, and we're just going through a process of change with our consumer consultation group, where it's been a very small group of people. We had terms of reference in that group that said that you had to be a consumer of our services to be a member, and given that that there are 30,000 people in WA, there's no way that those terms of reference are too narrow. So we're going through a process. The board's agreed to a change in that strategy. We're looking to create more of an online community, so that we won't have regular meetings per se, but that we will have an online community where people can nominate how they want to engage with us. So they might nominate to receive regular research updates, our media. They can nominate how they'd like to be involved. Do they want to review policy papers? Are they prepared to be involved in focus groups if we need to run them? Would they like to be involved with the Dementia-Friendly Communities program and become part of our Friends program or our Champions program? So I think, and I anticipate we'll have hundreds of people involved in that community. It won't be exclusively online. If people aren't online, then they can nominate to be communicated with by snail mail. So it won't be exclusive, but in a day and age where a lot of people belong to online communities, and it's how they not only communicate but how they relate, then that's where we hope to go with that. So we need to do better than what we're doing in that respect, and what we do in that space will actually dovetail into what's happening with the Dementia-Friendly Communities project, where we need to make sure that we're tapping in to not only hear from people with dementia but engage them as part of our army, if you like, of people who are going to change the paradigms, the stigma. And I think, Rachel, I think that's what's happening, is that when you start to get a government, you get a Prime Minister who stands up and talks about dementia as in a well-being model, and talk about dementia and living well in the community, it's very confronting to people's stereotype or myth that they have about people with dementia, that they're always old, that they're always frail, and that they mostly live in residential care. So you start then to really change the paradigm. And I watched Glenda this morning with a journalist in our interview for the news tonight, and you could just see this journalist just having their view about dementia completely turned on its head by having a conversation with someone like Glenda. So as you start to change the paradigm in terms of the framework that you approach this, so we're talking about well-being, our dementia-friendly community assumes that people in the community are going to continue to enjoy their daily experience, and we should facilitate that. And that we have a positive messaging campaign around that. You start to change some of the stereotypes, then I think you start to change the behaviours.
And I just wondered if you feel like it's on a par with changes that also might be happening in residential care. Like, I watched my mum's journey for 7 years, and now she is in residential care. And I just see the culture there that feels like it's so, I'm challenged by things like television constantly being on, and aware of how noise is. And so I asked you, how is it for you with just having a television on all the time in a room, especially commercial television?
Can you hear me?
A bit closer.
A bit closer. Okay, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
My mother-in-law died recently, and I've seen what's happened in aged care facilities, and I think we've got a long way to go. Bronte wants to add.
I was just there with my mother who died, but she had been in an aged care facility with mild cognitive impairment leading to some sort of Alzheimer's or dementia, undiagnosed in the last 6 months to a year. I think what we observed was probably similar to what you're observing with your mother, and many people do experience that. But there are enormous challenges in the aged care industry. We heard today on Talkback Radio, Penny Flett, who's the Chief Executive of the Brightwater Group here in Western Australia, speak about those challenges in relation to the use of psychotropic drugs to sedate and control behaviour with people with dementia and so on. I think what we've observed is what others will observe, that there is a goodwill and a good intention to provide the best level of care, but there are enormous challenges with the lack of resources, for example, and also the inability of staff perhaps to have access to good quality changing training and so on, so that they can keep abreast of issues that are brought to them in terms of managing people with dementia. And the speaker that was here less than 2 weeks ago also spoke about a new approach to care, rather than just by putting the person at the centre of the care. I mean, we might get arguments from those who are in the care profession at the moment, but Dr. Power said it wasn't simply a matter of overlaying that on top of the existing model of care. It was about reconceptualising the whole basis of care and trying to put the person at the centre. And I'd have to say, as former educators, when we deal with children in schools, we talk about how wonderful it would be for children to have individualised tuition and instruction and care. And it seems to me, from my short experience in this area with my mother in aged care, that what is a nice objective but often is under stress to be achieved fully is the fact that it's very difficult for an individual person in aged care, with or without dementia, to have that individual attention, because you can't have a one-on-one ratio between the resident and a carer. It just will never be like that. And like schools, aged care facilities are, in our, using a sociological term, they're institutions. They have to be run like they are, otherwise they wouldn't be efficient. And that's the tension, I think, in that area.
Yeah, I think exactly, and I think I would just add that dementia-friendly communities work should not be at the expense of making sure there's good quality health, social care available to people with dementia. And I think there is a danger that actually it's if you want to be cynical, an approach that's about putting kind of support and care into the community and making people's lives good in the community could be considered to be a way of cutting other services. So I think you have to have attention to both of that. It's really important.
And I think that if once you're not productive, then you don't get the same attention. If it's probably not quite the right word, but yeah, you're not of value anymore. Yeah, it sounds terrible, doesn't it? That's how I think about it.
Well, with Glenda having the last word, I need to draw the evening to a close. I think it's appropriate, Glenda, that you have the last word. And I just would like you to join with me. I've got a small gift for you, Rachel, to take away as our guest from far away. And Glenda and Bronte, we've got a gift for you from just several suburbs away, a number of suburbs away, but you're our local stars, and I've got a gift for you. But ladies and gentlemen, the objective of this lecture series that we put together and host in this venue and provide you with some supper afterwards, the objective for this is to increase the understanding and the conversation in the community about dementia. That as you understand dementia more, you'll be able to go into your neighbourhoods and in your workplaces and talk about dementia more. So for us, this is this lecture series, this is the second year we've put this lecture series on. It's our commitment to inform and change the conversation about dementia so that we own it in our communities and in our neighbourhoods. It's something that lives among us and something that we embrace and understand, talk about, care about. So we really appreciate your involvement in our series. We appreciate your interest in the area, and we hope that we help enable your conversation as you leave from here and go back into your workplaces and your neighbourhoods.